We are going to be sketching a really simple dinosaur today. This is a step-by-step, so please feel free to follow along. Now I'm in Procreate right now, and we are going to be using the Campfire palette, which you can find under the palettes section of the colors. I'm going to go ahead and fill the base with a basic color. I chose this yellow. This is just so it saves our eyes from looking at that white screen. Now I'm going to go use the 6B pencil to begin sketching. I love using a pencil just because it keeps it loose, and honestly, it reminds me of drawing on paper. When I sketch, I like to start with basic shapes, and it's okay if these shapes look funny or abnormal. Right now, all that we're doing is getting an idea from our head onto paper. Now, I started with a circle for the head, a smaller circle for the snout, and an oval for the body. And then I start playing in with where I'm going to add the feet and the tail and arms. This is just something that is fun and free form, so feel free to draw your own sketch or follow along with mine. And remember, if you want to watch this sketch in full time, hear an in-depth explanation about the sketching process and other tidbits along the way, go over to patreon.com/Bethany Stahl, where you can find this dinosaur sketch in real time, draw it with me, and over there, I'm also going to have the project file download to where you can work with my sketch and layers and play around with what I've done. And you also get the download for my monoline brush. So what I'm going to do is add a layer. I'm then going to switch to my monoline brush, and I'm also grabbing a green. This is going to be our dinosaur's color. So what I want to do now is just trace the entirety of the perimeter of my sketch. So all around the outside, this doesn't have to be perfect. We just want to get a nice full color around this dinosaur. As I'm finishing, what I love about Procreate is to fill an item, you just drag and drop your color into it, and it's perfect. This is one of my favorite Procreate features, and I absolutely adore it. Now that we have this completed outline of a dino, what I'm going to do is go into my layers panel, and I'm going to drag our sketch layer to the top. What this is going to do is allow us to still see that original sketch. I'm going to go into the blending modes, and I'm going to change it to a multiply layer and lower the opacity. That way it's not in the way, but I can still see it. That way I won't lose all that progress I made at the beginning of this drawing. Now I'm going to go ahead and add another layer. In this layer, I'm going to make a clipping mask. That means I can only draw on the layer beneath it, which is the green dinosaur. Now I'm going to look for another color, and looking at our Campfire palette, I've decided to go with this nice yellow. I'm going to stick to the monoline brush and go in and draw on some color details that I want to be a variance from the green for our dinosaur. I've decided I want the belly and under the tail to be this yellow color, as well as the toenails. Now this is just something to where I draw a little arch on the belly, follow it through up the tail, and again, color in those toenails. Now I'm also going to make sure I complete my shapes, that way I can fill them or just go ahead and color them in. And then I go back and erase any places where I don't want the color to be. Now I'm going to go ahead and draw the eyes. Here, I'm going to go off palette and just grab a pure white because I think those will really make the eyes pop. I'm going to draw a circle and then hold my pen down. This makes my edges really smooth into a perfect shape. So I'm going to do that twice in a row. Draw, then hold. I'm going to repeat and go ahead and fill those eyes in. And now I'm going to erase just a little bit where the snout is to let the eyes look like they actually go behind the snout. This is going to get rid of their perfect circle shape, but also give a slightly more realistic look to the dinosaur. Now I know we're going for a cartoon, but we still want to give it some natural qualities. I'm now taking a pure black and I'm drawing in the pupils. I want the pupils nice and big, and I'm still drawing on a clipping mask. That way I can't go out of the white of the eye. So make sure you are using and taking advantage of those clipping masks and alpha locks. An alpha lock is just a fancy way of saying that the layer that you've already drawn, you can only draw on. So it's a way of sort of getting the clipping mask effect without creating a clipping mask additionally. Another hot tip about Procreate is 2 fingers undoes your last action and 3 fingers will go ahead and redo that action. So if you notice me throwing down 2 or 3 fingers, that is me undoing and redoing, which is incredibly helpful when trying to move through a drawing quickly. Now we're going to work on the outline. Again, I'm still using this black, and what I'm going to do is trace all the little features. So this means the eyebrows, around the body, the mouth, the nose. And what I'm doing is drawing, and just like the circle, I am holding my brush in shape. It is actually making these perfect arcs and curves. Now, there is a way that you can go ahead and change these arcs to be a little bit more precise and change the nodes within the arc, which is really cool. But for the sake of this drawing and keeping it simple, I simply allowed whatever arc it made to work with that, and I didn't do anything else. So this is very easy, very basic. Just go ahead and draw and hold, and you will get a beautiful arc shape. Now, it is okay if here your drawing is a little bit inside or a little bit outside of the arcs. We are going to fix that in the future. So right now, I just want to focus on getting a really nice and clean outline. And for those of you who struggle making clean lines, this will really help for those of you who don't have a steady hand or haven't necessarily perfected your drawing skills yet. This is something to where your lines will look perfect every single time, which is such a wonderful feature to have. It is important to note I'm not sponsored by Procreate or Apple. You do have to have an Apple device to use Procreate. So for the sake of this video and future Procreate tutorials, I did go out and buy the cheapest iPad I could find, and I grabbed the pencil and I am ready to go. So this is something to where unfortunately, it is not compatible with Android. I'm an Android person, so I don't have any Apple products in my house. So I did have to go out and buy this. But honestly, when you compare the investment in terms of illustrating and devices, this is still one of the cheaper options for you, because the only thing comparable to this would be one of the Wacoms that you can actually draw on the screen, which those get incredibly pricey. And while they are very cool, this is a really good option as well. And it's something to where, unlike Photoshop, there isn't a subscription. Procreate actually has a one-time purchase fee, and it's only like $15. Now for the inner details of my dino, I've actually changed my monoline brush to a thinner line. That way it's not as distracting when we look at it as the whole. And I am just going and tracing those little yellow spots that we have on our dinosaur, so the belly, tail, and I went ahead and drew some spots on the back because I felt like our dinosaur just needed a little bit more character. Once you're done with your outline, you're going to be in the cleanup phase. The cleanup phase for me switches between erasing and drawing. So any of those lines that we drew in the arcs that are slightly off, I go ahead and erase any overages I have and make sure that's cleaned up. And then I go back into our color layers and I will add some green in areas I was lacking, erase some that goes over the lines, and then clean up the insides as well. So cleaning up that yellow of the belly and the outside. This is a stage that I think is really important to give you that really clean line look. And it does take a little bit of time to go through and really look at it, but this is the part of illustrating that I really find cathartic, to where it is just very simple coloring in the lines, which is something we all have done before with coloring books, and it's so fun to just really stick to the basics of illustrating at this point. We are now at the point where we have a really cute basic dino, but I want to go a little bit further. So we're going to go on this yellow layer. We're going to put it as an alpha lock, and we are going to draw on that color layer. I'm going and grabbing a little bit darker of yellow, so still in our campfire palette, and I'm going to be drawing a line about a quarter of the way down the belly all the way to the bottom. So I really want to get this stage of color darkening on our dino. This is a really easy way not only to add some interest to your drawing, but also start to make it look like there is a little bit of curve to your dinosaur. Now, ultimately, this is going to be a relatively flat illustration, so it's going to be very apparent that it's 2D, but these little details really help add interest and start to give more texture and shading and color to your illustration. So once I've done one, I go a little bit darker again on that palette and color again, and there isn't a darker yellow on the palette. So what I do is from this darkest color, I'm going to go to our color wheel and just drag diagonally down to get the next stage down manually. And I always drag at a diagonal because this will keep it in the relatively same zone. If you drag straight down, it will go a little black and muddy. And then if you drag horizontal, it might go out of your nice palette. So make sure you always drag down at a slanting diagonal. Now I want to add a bit of a background. We're not doing a full background, but this is more of like a spot illustration, which are typically circles. So I am just using my monoline, drawing a circle, holding it down so it smooths the edges, and then I'm placing one finger down as a tap, and that actually makes it a perfect circle, which is so cool. So you don't have to worry if you can't draw a perfect circle. I can't either. So use the program to help you out. I'm filling that in blue, and then I want to add some other elements. So now I'm adding in some clouds. Still with this monoline brush, I grabbed a little bit lighter of a shade of the blue, and I'm just throwing in some puffy clouds to give a little bit of interest in the background. Again, it doesn't have to be anything fancy because our main focus is going to be on the dinosaur. Now I'm thinking that this dinosaur might be on a tropical beach somewhere, tropical environment, so I am just drawing some sand beneath our toes of this dinosaur. So I thought the sand needed to come out into the foreground a little bit, so I grabbed the charcoal brush, and what I'm doing is I'm actually now drawing outside of the circle, and I am making a sort of a line and a very rough sketchy look to bring the spot illustration a little bit more life and out onto the page a bit more. Now I'm grabbing a darker shade and I am just coloring where that shadow would be. Again, if the light was hitting from the upper left corner, it would be under this back side of the tail, of the toes, and of the body. So again, these little details really help bring an entire illustration to life. Now I want to add some texture to my dinosaur, so I'm going and dragging downwards of our green to grab a darker color, and I'm going to use that same charcoal brush that I was using for the shadows underneath the dino for our actual dinosaur. So I'm going back onto those shady layers and I'm just loosely shading over those shadows we've already done and making them have a bit of texture. Now this is something to where it's okay if it looks a little messy at first, because just like how we refined our drawing earlier, we're going to refine it again. So this shading process does have a lot of back and forth with drawing and refining and drawing and refining to really get a solid look. And once I've finished with the green on a multiply layer, I'm going to also do the same thing with a yellow. I'm drawing that new layer, grabbing that charcoal, making it a multiply layer. And then I am going in to do some shading of the yellow, again in these same exact spots. Now, this yellow is going to go over the green a little bit. So I am blending some yellow and green in certain areas to give a little bit more depth to the illustration and to blend some colors and really make the whole drawing a little bit more cohesive. So again, the same thing of shading in the shadows and then erasing. Now what's really cool is you can change your eraser to a charcoal brush. That means the same brush that we're drawing with, you can also erase with that Stahl brush, and this gives a way more natural look. Something else that you can do is go to that little smudgy finger and smudge around your drawing. And what this is going to do on our texture layer is really help blend out any harsh lines, and it's going to soften it. So just like if you were drawing with pastels on paper and you started rubbing your finger around, it's going to blur together. And that's exactly what that smudgy finger does. This is really great for adding texture and really blending everything in together and giving your illustration more of a natural look. Once you are done with the shadows, I'm going to make a new layer and make it a screen layer. And I'm going to take a lighter green and draw in areas where I think there would be highlights. So on the snout, the eyebrows, the upper parts of the leg, the upper parts of the tail. So anywhere where the light would be hitting, that is where I'm going to draw my highlights and still using that charcoal brush to give us that texture. Now, my camera does stop recording, but I use that alpha lock style on my outline, and I end up changing my outline to a green color, and I continue adding texture into the background of my drawing, into the clouds, which I have come out, and I add a little butterfly, which is what our dinosaur is looking and raising his arms at. I'm so sorry that the camera failed. I really wish I had that footage, but again, it's the same exact concepts we were using. So hopefully it is easy for you to keep using those same concepts of adding texture, blurring things around, to really get in that fun, exciting texture. And of course, if you want to leave your outline black, you can. But if you do decide to change it to green, you are welcome to do so. And then in the yellow areas, I did change the outline to yellow. Sometimes I think this gives a more clean look to it, but it really depends on your style and what style you're hoping to achieve. And that is it. This is how you get a very basic character illustration. I'd love to see you all add more detail. If you do try this tutorial, post it on Instagram and tag me. I'm at Bethany Stahl Art, and I would love to see your creations. I'd love to see different palettes. I'd love to see more details, different styles, whatever you want to do. I would love to see it. So definitely tag me if you try this out, and don't hesitate to try illustrating. I did not know how to illustrate when I started my authorship career. It was something I learned along the way. So it is something that we can all learn. And I promise you, this drawing is very easy to do. And if you do want those extra files, that longer video, to see more of the details, go over to patreon.com/BethanyStahl. I have a ton of resources over there. I have Photoshop tutorials over there. And if you are looking to be an author, I have a ton of author information all over on that Patreon, which is only designed to help you out and get you further in this wonderful creative career. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.